What is going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of really important things, so tons of massive info ahead of you. Here today we have Savage Gear, understanding Cruel, the benefits of Ignore Defense, and also crit damage. But as always, the first thing we're going to do is give credit where it is due, because I'm going to be citing a lot of graphs and information that I did not find myself. So the first shout out is going to go to HG Senti, our good friend here, and the second one is going to be from Bobo. So now for this next part, hopefully by the end of this you're going to fully understand where you can get the most benefit out of Savage Gear, Savage and Cruel together, and some of the limitations of crit damage in this game, and how you can kind of use other damage dealing multipliers to your advantage. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Savage set, and we're going to bounce back and forth, and you'll understand why in just a second. So now that we're here, let's talk about the percent gain in damage you do in fact get from a Savage set. As you can see here, things kind of peak at around 3100 or 3200 defense. Now the main thing you're going to ask yourself is, we see the defense on the bottom, the percent of damage increase on the vertical part of the axis here, and so the question is going to be, Murder, how am I supposed to know what kind of defense I'm facing and my opponents? And as we can see here, includes any defense down ability, so you're going to want to do some addition if you really want to min-max this, although you can definitely guesstimate this in your head and kind of just round numbers off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the defense levels of pretty much every single content that would be relevant to you, and I'll go over Arena last because that's kind of me guessing the maximum amount of damage that you could possibly get. So first, let's start with Clan Boss. Ultra Nightmare has 1500 defense, Nightmare has 850 defense. So right away, just looking at this chart here, you can kind of see that if you're trying to get maximum damage out of Savage Gear, it's not going to happen for Clan Boss. One thing you would want to do is use Relentless Gear where it's necessary, Toxic Gear, and Fury Gear. Fury probably being the best part if you do want to maximize your damage outside of just putting raw damage dealing gear on. This is mostly for unkillable teams, but you might be able to find a way to use a defensive Fury set to your advantage. Now there is one thing to mention with the Clan Boss and with Savage Gear. This is something that, while it may not make sense mathematically, it's going to be kind of a real life application based on the amount of Clan Boss testing I've done in the past, so on and so forth. So as we can see on the screen, this is a Clan Boss picture of a team that I did make earlier, and it's with Bad El Khazar as the leader, Iron Brago, Razin Scarhide, Valkyrie, and Mashald. Now Razin here is in fact in Savage Gear, and one thing to know about using Savage or Cruel Gear, you do get an increase to your mastery damage, and obviously Razin Scarhide, with this recent AI fixed back to what he normally should be without using that A3, he does a massive amount of damage. However, like I just said, Savage Gear isn't the most optimal gear set to use if you want to maximize damage. He could do better in Fury. However, based on the gear I have for myself, the most defensive stats with damage I could get was from Savage, and I just tacked on that added bonus of the mastery damage, so this set made the most sense for me as opposed to using something like a Toxic set or a Fury set as I just mentioned. So with that being said, Giant Slayer champions can have some value to Savage Gear, but it really depends on the quality of gear you have when comparing all of these different sets. So now that we've gone over Clan Boss and kind of gave you the breakdown of the defense there, let's go over the dungeons. We have the Fire Knight, Spider, and Dragon dungeon sitting at approximately 4000 defense on stage 20, and the Ice Golem sitting at 3200 defense. So when looking at the maximum damage you can do and the benefit you would get from a Savage set, obviously you can see here that the defense is going to be pretty much in the sweet spot after the defense down, and it's going to be close enough where it isn't a waste like it would be in the Clan Boss. The only dungeon that can be a little bit questionable is going to be Ice Golem, since it is sitting at 3200 defense, so these are all things to consider, but once again, it all depends on the gear you have. If you have really strong Savage gear, don't look at this video and say, okay, this is not the most optimal, change to different gear, have worse stats. It's not going to work out in your favor. So if Savage works for you because you have very strong stats, just take that additional bonus even though it isn't in the sweet spot. Now the next thing we're going to talk about are the Faction War Stage 21 boss crypts. Now I labeled these as color coded instead of where they're specifically assigned as far as faction wars go, so do keep that in mind. So the first stage 21 Crypt Keeper we're going to be talking about is the blue one, who is sitting at 6100 defense. Next we have the yellow one sitting at 7,300 defense. Next we have the green Crypt Keeper who is at 4,900 defense, followed by the red Crypt Keeper which is at 2,400 defense, so very low on that one. And then finally we have the purple one sitting at 4,900 defense. So if you are using champions, you want to use savage gear on them, consider these numbers when going forward. Throwing that defense down, is it going to be worth running savage gear or just running your best damage dealing gear based on the defense levels I did just show you there? So the reason why I went over the defense first and then after I showed you this damage chart is so you can kind of understand what the base defense levels are like going from this chart here, which is the savage set, percent gain in damage, looking at the base defense, because all of the other charts are going to be similar to this. So if you have to, you can definitely go back in the video, look at what I just showed you where the defenses are relevant to whatever you're trying to do in the game. And the next part is going to be arena, which is going to be probably the hardest part to gauge. But since I've spent a fair amount of time in all of the arena brackets for one reason or another, I'm going to give you the estimated amount of arena most defense-based teams are going to have in their stall defenses or normal defenses. So first, let's start with Platinum Arena. Platinum Arena, you can expect to see anywhere from 4,000 all the way to 7,000 defense. It's a lot, but with Iron Brago, it's definitely a possibility with people not spending too much, and especially while considering that defense up buff. Next we have gold, and in gold you're pretty much going to see 3,000 to 4,000 defense, and as you get below gold I would say it's safe to assume at least 2,000. Some of it may be lower based on the quality of gear that people do have, however I would say 2,000 is a solid baseline for everything under gold arena. Now with this being said, and as you can kind of think about in your head, this is the reason why some people have came forward after my Cardinal video and said, Murder, I have champions at 4,200 defense but only 40,000 health and they're not surviving, even though they do in fact have more defense than I did show in that video. The reason why this is because, as we can see here, if you actually go below the defense threshold that you're looking for, so let's assume 3,000 defense with the defense down, this severely takes the value away from something like a savage set because you're just ignoring so much defense, you're not hitting that full potential of the 3,200 defense overall. So what does this mean? You stack as much HP as possible, and what I was doing is I was getting very close to 70,000 or 80,000 with that HP aura from Titus, and this really allows me to have the greatest chance of success, especially since Cardinal is giving herself that defense up buff. So once again in this game, pretty much after 4,000 defense, whether it's clan boss, arena, anywhere you're at, the diminishing returns for improving your survivability severely fall off. So after 4,000 defense, that's really when you want a heavy emphasis in stacking HP over defense there. Like I said, this will apply for clan boss, but you do have to be careful with clan boss because that stun is based on the health, which can be a problem going forward for you, especially if you're trying to guide the stun. So now that we covered the savage set, let's go ahead and look at savage and cruel combined. This is the percent gain in damage from savage and cruel. As we can see here, the limits are much higher as far as the damage gained. We're sitting at just under 35% increase in damage here, which can be expected adding that additional ignore defense, but you're also getting that attack. Something to keep in mind in the sweet spot once again is only slightly shifted up to about 3,300, maybe 3,400, probably closer to 3,300 defense overall. So that's what you can take from this chart. Now, from moving on from this savage and cruel set to what I'm about to show you next is really going to let you gauge and kind of understand how strong ignore defense is. You may be wondering some things like, why does my savage do so much better than non-savage gear if I'm not in these sweet spots? And I'm going to show you that next. So here we have an awesome chart here, percent gain in damage from ignore defense set and mastery. We have the example of Savage, Cruel, and Helm Smasher in the yellowish color. We have Savage plus Helm Smasher in the gray color, Savage and Cruel in the orange, and then we have the baseline Savage or Helm Smasher in the blue here. So as we can see, if you don't understand this chart, I'm going to explain it, don't worry. The big takeaway here is, unlike many things in this game, ignore defense from sets and masteries are in fact additive. It's not multiplicative, which is why you can see these amazing spikes in the chart here with Helm Smasher, just adding on ignore defense, doing a absolutely stupid amount of damage. As you can see, Savage, Cruel, and Helm Smasher topping out at 95% increased damage, which is pretty much unheard of from any other source in the game. So looking at that Savage Cruel Helm Smasher, we do have the sweet spot of 4,000, which is going to be the highest of all of them as far as how much defense you should be looking at after a defense down. Then we kind of shift over just a little bit to 3,500, or maybe closer to 3,700 with Savage and Helm Smasher. Then Savage, Cruel, and Savage or Helm Smasher we did go over in the last charts here. So after looking at this, you can definitely get a gauge of how strong Helm Smasher is. So if you're not taking Helm Smasher, even though it is an RNG mastery, it's probably in your best interest to take it over something like Flawless Execution. So now that we've gone over that, let's take a look at the percent gain in damage from plus 60 crit damage, which is going to be the equivalent of running 3 crit damage sets. And now while the important part isn't so much the plus 60 crit damage coming from the 3 sets, what you really want to look at is where the major fall off happens from crit damage, making it kind of a hard cap on what you should be looking for before you start looking for external ways to increase your damage. So as we can see here, it's pretty safe to say once you hit 300% crit damage, you can kind of start looking for other ways to improve your damage, and I'm going to go over a few examples there. Now, one reason why I'm talking about this is I found this out the hard way. I actually geared one of my Cold Hearts with 386% crit damage, and I was very, very disappointed with the amount of damage it was actually doing to the bosses, and it was the Spider 20 dungeon where I was using this Cold Heart. So after that, I said, okay, something has to be wrong, something doesn't seem quite right, and as we can see here, the drop off in damage that you actually gain from this is significant after 300%. So what can you do as the player? And I'm going to show you some numbers that might sound a bit surprising. But for this example, we're going to be talking about the champion Gerptuk Mossbeard. This passive adds 22.5% passive damage, then an additional 12% when you have the Stoked Fury Mastery. So now think of this for comparison. That's the same as having a Gerptuk Mossbeard plus a champion with 250% crit damage, when comparing that to a champion with 380% crit damage. So Gerptuk Mossbeard alone is being that equivalent in this situation of 130% crit damage, which is absolutely insane. So with that insane comparison, keep in mind that once you hit 300% crit damage, if you are in the end game stages of this game or even late game, try to kind of hold yourself off, see what you can do to amplify the damage with champions like Gerptuk, Battle Khazar, and anyone else you can possibly think of that does increase damage. So with all of that being said, what is another point that you can kind of take away from this that doesn't have a lot to do with ignore defense or crit damage itself? This is going to be something in Arena when you're looking at the value of attack, and we did have that video that compared attack to crit damage, how you can kind of do the formula to see what's best. Now after I'm explaining how after 300%, as we can see from the chart here, it really slows down as far as the benefit gain in damage that you can possibly get. This is when it's very ideal to, once you hit 310% crit damage, start only focusing on increasing your attack or getting your champions into ignore defense gear, because that's going to be the greatest benefit for you as the player when you're trying to do that max potential damage. So hopefully, based on the numbers and the data that I did just show you, you have a better understanding of how ignore defense works, how crit damage works, and how damage amplification actually works in this game, and to your benefit after giving you 2 comparative models with champions like Gerptuk Mossbeard, so on and so forth. Once again, a huge shout out to HG Senti and Bobo for the information. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I did you guys proud and really put this information out there to help a ton of players. Give me your feedback in the comments. What do you guys think? As always, guys, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.